back to Wonder of Faith. As always, I'm Anthony Bush, and today we're going to talk about something different once again. This is special episode number 2, which means that we're going to take a pause from looking at the wondrous orders to just talk in general about certain aspects of faith or life. Today, I wanted to talk about kind of what happens when we become depressed or kind of lose sight of that thing that inspires us. I think we all share in this experience where sometimes we feel great, and then others we kind of get into this lull, this low place where we just feel like uninspired or sad or like we have lost our way. So I wanted to talk about how that can be handled and kind of the role that that plays in our lives, kind of those downs. So I think it's honest to say everyone goes through that in their life, and we all have different varying periods and how strong they are. Some of us may go up and down, but it's not such a strong movement from up to down. Those with bipolar disorder are known to have quite extreme up to down, and that's something that they have to regulate and work with medication and with therapy and things like that. But most of us don't fall into that such extreme category. But that doesn't mean it's any less significant to us. Only we know what we go through, mentally or emotionally in its fullness. We can tell people, we can try to explain, but in the end, only we can feel what we feel. That's the definition of self, of knowing self. And so it's up to us in this regard to kind of handle our state of mind. I want to focus on the bottom today because I think that's the one that perhaps needs more attention to handle correctly. So each of us are, as humans, stand for something. We have our ideas, and sometimes they may change, they may fluctuate, and others it may be more fully baked. It doesn't change as much, and I think that's true of adults more than of younger people. The younger people, of course, myself included, are going through life and still kind of figuring out who we are and what we believe in and that which is valuable to us. And so in that sense, because there's not as much stability in that regard, we may find it hard to find that lighthouse or that beacon that allows us to remain steadfast even when our emotions don't match up to that, to our mental understanding, our rational understanding. So, and I would say even some adults still are plagued with this issue, whether it's just a matter of their personality or what they've been through in life. And so whether you feel this a lot of the time or maybe once in a blue moon, it's all something we face and go through. So I want to talk about what is it we can do when we get to this point, this kind of low, to not necessarily bring us back up, but to remain steadfast in those moments and wait for it to pass. And I think what's important is when we get to this point, there's two aspects. There's the emotional, how we feel can very much hinder or affect how we think, but the two are not the same. So to know happiness is different from feeling happiness. If you know what happiness is, if you know that you're doing what you should to try to reach happiness, then that's a completely different thing from feeling the emotional aspect of happiness or that elation that we often correlate to the rational understanding of happiness. So when we talk about these feelings we have, they're very strong and they kind of can impede our mental understanding. So we have to make sure that that isn't happening, that our mental understanding is not being manipulated by our emotional and our feelings. So what can we do? Well, what we believe and what we hold as important is very much the center of this kind of scheme of remaining stable in these times. For me, of course, that would be God, the church, moral truth, these things that are enduring, whether I'm feeling happy or not. To me, that's my rock. That's the stronghold. That doesn't change no matter how I feel. And so even when I'm down or whenever I feel kind of not my normal self or whatnot, there's still that's there. That's permanent. That does not move or change. And though I may change emotionally, humans change. It's just a matter of the human condition. But even amidst that change, we can still find that which is permanent and keep ourselves kind of locked to it so that we're not lost in the process. I think there are too many people these days that are or get lost in the process because their emotions, their feelings very much dictate what they think, what they believe, and it changes with the wind. And rather, stability, knowledge of that which is actual, that which is eternal, that is important for keeping us locked in place so that we don't do something stupid or that we'll regret later or deceive who we really are meant to be. I believe that each person has a solid foundation. They were made by God to do something, to be a certain way, to be good at certain things, and that's that. It's just a matter of finding out what that is, holding on to that, knowing that that's who we are. And then even when our emotions don't seem to match that, we still know the truth. And truth does not escape us because of how we feel in the moment. So when we talk about this rational understanding, it's very important as an anchor to keep that in mind. So we have to kind of go within ourselves and evaluate, what is it that makes me me? What is it that I live for, that I strive for? And what is it that I want in life? And hopefully the answer is God, the good, love, that which is true, all these things. That especially helps, in a communal understanding. If we're dealing with this, if we can share in these things we strive for with others, then I honestly believe that can help us to better our emotional state as well. I do know, biologically speaking, there are chemical balances that have to do with how we feel. And so no matter how we think or what we believe, that can not have a full impact on what we feel, because feeling is a biological process. So we have to remember that just because we know or we hold to these things, it doesn't mean that it's going to perhaps lessen our ability to feel or make it any easier in the emotional realm. But it will make it easier in the rational realm, and it can be protected from the effects of the emotional. So when we talk about emotion, I think how we focus on the emotion can very much help or hinder the situation. So let's say someone is feeling down. It can be brought upon by something that happens. It can just happen without any reason as far as we know. And we just feel kind of depressed, or like we can't find anything optimistic or good. Well, we have to focus on those things that we once knew to be good, whether it's God or truth or right action, moral upstandedness. These things, we have to remember what place they hold in our lives. Try to find them again, and it may not make us feel better, but if we can reach out our hand and effort and hold to it, then we have that with us until it passes. But instead, if we kind of just forget about that for a while because it's too hard to try to struggle against what we feel, and we just let the emotions kind of take us over, we think badly of ourselves. We don't see the value in ourselves in that moment. And instead of trying to get out of it, we just stay there. And we are stuck in this rut where we can no longer see what's important. We can no longer understand ourselves. We can no longer see the good even in others or in the world around us. And this kind of over time builds up because you're holding that in. You're kind of just letting it sit there and accumulate inside until finally it may make you do something that you regret, whether that's hurting yourself or, if God forbid, trying to end your own life, or something very drastic and unnecessary. These are dangerous things because we're not meant to, sit here and just think about ourselves like that. Naturally, we're supposed to search for that which is good, which is higher than ourselves. So we have to keep sight of that, even when it's hard. And I know in this day and time, especially, with everyone kind of disconnected, it's hard to find a genuine core that allows us to remember these things. But it is able to be found, I think, most certainly in true community. Social media and the kind of the modern communication systems, they're good for learning information, for interacting, but it's not the same as genuine connection. If we are just talking to our parents through Facebook posts or like posting pictures of ourselves smiling, even when we're not happy, trying to make ourselves look all that when we're not, that's not really helping yourself. That's you putting up a face, a mirage. And therefore, you know very well that the picture on Facebook is not the reality. That is just what you want people to see. But instead, we sit here and continue to struggle with these things, and they're getting worse because we're not dealing with them, but just letting them remain within us and kind of fester over time. But from a Christian Catholic standpoint, within ourselves is not just this kind of ruminating self-doubt and disgust and all that, but there's also Christ and God present within us, separate from us, but within us still. And so it's from that place, that ability for the good, that ability to connect with that which is good and greater than ourselves, that we can push the other out, that other darkness, those doubts, and those unhelpful portions of ourself. But it takes practice, it takes time and effort, and that's the key word, effort. If we don't try, if we don't, through our will, force ourselves to confront these things and remove them from our person, then they will stay there. And it will get harder as time goes on, because the more that accumulates, the harder it becomes to get it removed. So it's good to handle it right at the get-go when you feel it, when you start to feel these things, to talk to someone about it. Tell them how you feel so that they can help you. Pray to God. He who knows you best can help and give you the love and the optimism you need. Now, I want to make it absolutely clear that doesn't mean life is going to be easy, and it doesn't mean that you're going to see yourself as perfect, because both of those things are false. We are not perfect. We do struggle with things. We do have kind of the skeletons in the closet, so to speak, that we don't want people to know about. But if we let that part of ourselves take control, or to start dictating our actions, our thoughts, then that's where the problem arises. We have to constantly give the power within ourselves to the good, to God, because it's from there that we learn and grow, rather than allowing the doubts to do that, because they'll just instead break us down, make us shadows of who we really are, and cause us to no longer see what is true. Our sense of reality becomes so disconnected from actual reality that it's hard to reconcile, and nothing that happens will be seen as it should. For instance, if you're invited to a baby shower and you're in this state of being, then you're going to go to the baby shower, maybe smile, put on a face for everyone, but you're going to say, wow, I don't have a child, I'm not raising a family right now, and this person is, how horrible, like I'm just not doing what I'm supposed to do, and it's my fault, and I need to stop being this way, and like you just keep going on and on and on. And even when you're at a baby shower, a place to celebrate life and the joy of birth, which is absolutely a joyous occasion, there you are making a negative observation or evaluation in it. So it's very important that we keep our eyes, our mind on the right things, even when our emotions tell us otherwise. The reason I believe is part of our soul, really. So you kind of have the body and the soul kind of sometimes unified, sometimes in contradiction to one another. And the body aspect, the flesh aspect, is very hard to ignore sometimes, because the feelings are so strong and they're so manipulative of our thoughts and our point of view that it's hard to really struggle against them and deny them. But the soul, our reason, our ability to see what actually is also strong, but it requires our giving the soul permission to take control, because it can be quite difficult to, like I said before, to struggle against what we're feeling. But once we do decide that we can break away from those influences that are within ourselves, and that we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we can live for what is good, we can align our actions and our mind and our will to God, then it all changes, because we're no longer living for ourselves or in our own bubble. The bubble's bursted. We're part of something greater than ourselves, and we're completely open to that reality of truth that we weren't before. And so with that understanding, we're able to push forward even in our sin, in our brokenness, and see what is. I very much believe that weakness is strength. And that sounds very contradictory, but it's true. When we finally realize that we cannot do it on our own, that we alone cannot fix our own problems, that we are not the end-all be-all of truth or understanding, and that both people who we love and God can help us, that's where the power is. When we're weak enough and truthful enough with ourselves to realize, I can't do this. I'm not my own God. I can't fix my own problems. So I need to go to He who can and those who are able to help. And once we finally accept that, then there is a relief because we no longer have to be our own God, our own king, our own authoritarian. So it's with this kind of change of mindset, this coming to understand and not just know or think about these things, but come to know them as true, is experiencing them, experiencing God's work within us. And let's say even reconciliation, the sacrament that in the church that wipes away sin. When we take advantage of the sacraments and God's presence and wanting to be in our lives and reaching out to those we love, then finally we're able to be our truest self. We're able to see ourselves for who we are and then live accordingly. And it takes time, it takes effort, it's hard, I'm not going to lie, but it's always worth it. Everything I've talked about in the orders here today, it's all hard to obtain. But if we put in the work, if we will it for ourselves and are willing to go on the hard and long road to get there, then it's all worthwhile. It just takes the first step of faith and the ability and willingness to let go of ourselves, so to speak, to die to oneself. That's why when people talk about baptism, they talk about our old selves dying to themselves and our new selves coming to life, because it truly is about that. It's about giving up all that we've held before and starting over and starting better by not just focusing on what we want and what we see and what we want to be true and all these different doubts and things we tell ourselves, and finally just see that which God says and what He wants. And when you take all these small thousands of voices in your head and remove them and leave only the one real voice, then so much can be accomplished and so much good can come from that. So these are just my thoughts, this is definitely what I've come to know through the years as I've dealt with these things myself. But it's truly a joyful situation, We may feel down sometimes, but when we finally realize that we've forgotten what's important and we come back to where we should be, it's magnificent. And it's always a joy to return to the path that we're supposed to be on. So I hope this helps you. If you have any questions about this, please reach out. I'd be happy to help. And I do hope that these insights of mine can help you to find peace in your own way and help orient you towards what is good and what is better for you. As always, may God be with you and bless you, and may you find final victory in Christ.